Hi, Cydney.
Hi. Me and Hala have been talking about politics and how it affects us and all the horrible things happening in the world and all the corruption that's hurting people, that's destroying lives, and the ways in which our government's been corrupted and the ways in which we've been lied to. Um, we talk a little bit about the ways in which Muslims are demonized in America and dehumanized. And one comparison we made was between the horrible concert shooting that happened like a month ago, where a Muslim man went in and killed a bunch of girls and teenagers to protest, I'm assuming, or as a terrorist act. And a day later, America was flooded with pictures of those victims, with their names, with their interests. They were fully humanized. In France, the last couple of terrorist attacks in France, basically everything stopped. Facebook stopped. The news stopped. Everything was, we pray with France. We stand with France. Right? So if you're from the West, if you're from America, if you're from England, if you're from France, and you die in a terrorist attack, you're fully humanized. The whole world stops to mourn you. But the people who are mostly affected by terrorism are Muslims. Muslims die by the hundreds and thousands in terrorist attacks, and they are never humanized. And whether those terrorist attacks come from Boko Haram or ISIS or ISIL or Al-Qaeda, people are burned alive, they're shot, they're poisoned, they're blown up, they're dying acid attacks, and Americans never know their names. It's just a list. About a month ago, ISIS in Syria, which is, and believe it or not, America is working with ISIS in Syria.
That's true. And how about the governments too? And
Yeah.
yeah.
And we're working with ISIS in Syria, and so they arranged and so various territories have been taken over by various factions, and so there was some sort of prisoner exchange where one group of people was allowed to come out of enemy territory, and they were supposedly given food. It was, snack food. And what they did is, what ISIS did was they attached bombs to the snack food, waited for people to come. These people probably had been starving. It came to this sack of food to eat, and ISIS blew them up.
Mm-hmm.
And this was mostly children. I think it was 80-something people, and the majority of those people were children.
Yeah, that's true.
And this is America's ally in Syria. This this is what America's doing.
Oh, but what do you think about, because we have some people in Egypt think that ISIS, and they just blame a lot of people in Egypt that they are terrorists as well. Like they said, these are terrorists. They point in anybody religious, as the way the media doing here, that they are terrorists. And terrorists never attack Americans, like ISIS never did that. Never attack Israel as well. What do you say about that?
I think it's pretty obvious that, the terrorist groups that America is supposedly fighting against, to some extent, they are allied, right? The attacks that ISIS pulls, the people that ISIS attacks, right, and stabilizes, like Iraq. That is obviously, it helps America to have an unstable Iraq, to have access to all those oil resources, to have unstable territories. It helps America to have unstable Egypt. It helps America to have, instability in Iran, right? All these things help America, but it would not help America to have instability in Israel. Israel is our ally, and Israel is basically our face in the Middle East, right? We give them our weapons and allow them to have all this power. And so I think it's pretty obvious that, ISIS, ISIL, Al-Qaeda, I don't think that America is creating, there's this idea, right, of blowback, right, that the CIA is accidentally creating terrorist groups, right? So for instance, in Afghanistan in the 80s, right, the CIA trained Afghanistan troops to fight against Soviet Union for the Cold War, and then they accidentally became Al-Qaeda. Right, right. So, right, this is the idea that we're accidentally creating terrorists. Now, I don't think we're accidentally creating terrorists. I think that we're deliberately creating terrorists. We're deliberately creating groups to destabilize regions so that we can swoop in and assert authority, right? Because, right, if Iraq's unstable, then we got to have troops there, right? You got to have 50,000, 100,000 troops there.
Yes, that's true.
right? Right, and so that allows us to control those resources with our military and with our corporations. And so it makes sense that we would deliberately destabilize these regions. That's been the doctrine. That's been the American doctrine since Eisenhower, to destabilize countries. We destabilized Afghanistan. We destabilized Iran. We knocked over their democratically elected governments in order to protect our interests. And we've done this over and over and over again. America is not interested in stability. America profits from instability. American corporations, American government, we profit from instability. And we spent trillions of dollars, and we've lost thousands and thousands of American lives in these imperial adventures overseas. So we've killed thousands of Americans and millions of civilians overseas.
I just want to refer that when you mean America, you don't mean the people like me and you here. You mean the governments, because Americans doesn't know anything.
Right.
And media change everything, because we have the same game in Egypt too.
Yeah.
Media change everything.
I think one thing that Donald Trump is right about is the lying media. I think that America is under the mistaken impression that we don't live in a propaganda state. Mm-hmm. I think that we assume that we have a free media, they're the fourth estate, they are that fourth leg of democracy, and that the news that we see has to be accurate. Mm-hmm. And to some extent, the news is accurate in some ways, but a lot of information is simply never discussed. There's certain things that we never talk about. You probably maybe have never noticed this, but every single network, every single news station supports the war.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
Supports all wars.
Yeah.
There's never any voice of dissent. It doesn't matter whether that's supposed to be a right-wing news station like Fox or a left-wing news station like MSNBC. Mm-hmm. There is no dissent when it comes to these wars. Everyone's thrilled to see bombs dropped, and there's underlying. And so basically, it's something we can't even talk about. Should we be fighting war? I mean, we're fighting wars in 7 different countries, and I don't think most Americans even know that. If you ask the average American and ask them why are we in Syria, they won't tell you. They won't know why
they don't.
At all.
That's true. That's true.
And so what we get is a lot of propaganda, and the propaganda works because we don't realize it's propaganda.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Actually, I don't know if you give me an advice how to, to stop the pain. The pain when I see everything, all injustice all over the world, in my country, in my other country. I mean, in Egypt, in the States, it's all over the world.
I guess the pain doesn't stop because the injustice isn't going to stop, and we're not going to stop seeing it. And I guess the only way to even alleviate that pain would be to do something, whether it's talking about it, getting information out. I think getting information out is important, and I think that Facebook, although it's definitely a propaganda arm of the government and these political parties, it can be used to get real information out and to really teach people about what's going on in the world. That helps. I think it helps to write letters. I think it helps make phone calls. It helps to go to town hall meetings. It helps to protest, real protest. Not that, honestly, the protest, that Women's March protest that happened after Donald Trump got elected, I honestly thought that was nonsense.
You know that people get arrested in Egypt just for talking about it?
Yeah.
Just for protest? You know that? We have a guy in Egypt. He is in a 30 something, and he get in the court, he get accused by 31 years to stay in jail because he protesting. Jeez. And the other way, there is a young lady killed by the police officer, and she killed, and they have all the evidence that this police officer killed her, and he get accused by 10 years. 10 years. Do you believe this?
I believe this.
How do you feel? How can I stop my pain when I see this injustice? You have no clue. It's my kind of
No, I think that to some extent, to survive in this world, we have to be a little bit calloused. Right? You have to grow a thicker skin and be a little bit calloused. Not a lot, right? You can't be totally closed off from other human beings, but a little bit of callousness has to happen, or you will be essentially an open wound, and you'll always be getting hit and hurt you'll always be hurt. And so you holla, you have to grow a callus, a little bit of a callus. And you have to focus on your own life to some extent. Focus on your own children, their happiness, because they'll be your happiness. Focus on your own career. Focus on teaching people how to do math and the joy you get from that. Focus on achieving those goals too. Because you can't be overwhelmed by the stuff that happens in the world. There's always going to be terrible stuff in the world.
That's true.
And so you also have to focus on your own happiness and on the things that you're achieving. There are aspects of this, most things we can't control. There's a guy outside of the store right now who's homeless, and that's horrible. And he's out there asking for change, and that's horrible. The only thing I can do is give him $1 and say, God bless you. Hope everything's better. I can't take him home. I can't, right? Because I can't do it. And so you have to accept. Holly, I think that in a way you like sort of absorbing all the pain in the world, in some ways is kind of arrogant. Right? If you absorb all the pain in the world, you're saying that you have the power to lift all those people up, and you just don't.
That's true.
Basically, you might be able to help one person, 2 people, or help a lot of people a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? So you can't accept all the pain in the world because you don't have the power to change. You don't have the power to actually help everybody in the world. The best you can do is help create change and help yourself. And so you got to let go of the other stuff.
Hi.
Okay. Hi, Michelle. How you doing?